Right, I think we're all good to get going. And hopefully we'll present 45 minutes of very lots of practical insights and ideas and thoughts. So as hopefully you would expect from a REBA event, we have fabulous panelists who've stepped up today to talk about where they're on this particular journey. So just to remind you, make sure you're all in the right room. As you can see, flexible benefit technology in global benefit strategy, enhancing consistency, equity, and cultural sensitivity. Quite a lot to cover in 45 minutes. Yeah. And we've got a panel that are on different stages of the journey, which hopefully reflects the audience as well. So I don't think everybody's got all the answers. Maybe Carl does, but yeah, we might be grappling with similar things to some of you in the room. But probably a good opportunity now to introduce everybody to you. So right next to me here, we have Carl Chapman, who is VP Pension Design and Partnerships at Ben, one of our exhibitors here today, and I'm sure he'll talk a bit more about what he does. And then in the middle, we have Jamie Davidson, who is VP Reward at Chart Industries. And Jamie, when you answer your first question, maybe you can explain a little bit about Chart, contextualize. And then on the end, we have Fabio Mazetti, who's Global Benefits, Health and Wellbeing at Philip Morris International. I'm sure as you talk, you will also just allude a little bit to your organisation so everybody understands the three organisations we have in front of us today. Now, I like to start panel sessions with a bit of a polling question because that helps us as panellists and myself get a bit of a feel for you in the room. So if we can have the first polling question up at this point. Also, the other nifty trick I'm trying to do is make sure you take your phones out your pockets or wherever they are, answer the polling question, and then you've got them so you can ask questions as we do the panel and take some of the pressure off me. So I tried to think of four big main buckets that you're likely to fall into in terms of your benefits tech. So across most of your countries, all of your countries, do you tend to have a big single main platform? Or are you more likely to have several multiple platforms, several of them? Or do you tend to be predominantly local in terms of your platforms, country by country, for example? Or is it just a big complex mess? It's all sorts. So, you know what? I think when we looked at the options, we all knew what was going to come out top for that one, didn't we? So, mostly for the panelists' sake, given it's behind them, the figures are moving slightly, but about half the room are saying a hugely complex mix of all sorts. I think that plays well to what we're going to be talking about. We've got 1 in 5 who've got a main single platform, so that's possibly higher than I thought, but I think also I know some of you, and you work for big organisations, very well organised. In fact, you might be giving us tips through the session. Mostly local, 1 in 5 mostly local, slightly lower than I thought might be the case, but still substantial. And then 1 in 10 of you with multiple cross-country platforms. So all different stages of the journey. So I think what I'd like to do, given that we've got quite a mixed audience, and particularly that lots of you have got quite a mixture generally, get us onto the same page about what we mean when we talk about flexible benefits in 2024 going into 2025, and whether the whole understanding of flexible benefits actually differs across different countries. And Carl, I think you're probably best placed to answer that one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's working. So I think, first of all, flexible benefits is a very British phrase, right? I think what we really mean by flexible benefits is choice, right? So we're saying, giving people choice, and that could be choice in terms of flexibility in core benefits. It could be choice in terms of voluntary benefits. It could be choice in terms of allowances and what you use that for. But as I say, flexible benefits is a very British phrase. If you look at the Americas or certainly the US, they use more allowance-based systems, so health spending allowances, flex spending allowances. If you look at Europe, it's cafeteria plans. So I think when you're working globally, it's just important to be mindful of those anomalies and how people describe these things. But ultimately, what we're looking to achieve is choice. And I think globally, anything other than choice these days is archaic. So every company should be looking to foster choice and facilitate choice as much as possible within their plans, and you can call that whatever you like. But ultimately, it's choice. Yeah.
Great, thank you. That just clarifies that perhaps what we were talking about in the late 90s is slightly not still in vogue. Some of you are probably too young even to remember what we were talking about in the late 90s. But so I want to go across now to Jamie and Fabio and just get a feel for where each of your organisations is on this, should we call it choice of benefits, flexible benefits and technology journeys. So starting with you, Jamie, then across to Fabio.
Hi everyone. So I'm Jamie Davidson. I work for a company called Chart Industries, and it's not a company that many people have heard of, but we are a global engineering company specialising in air and gas handling. So the more glamorous end of that is Formula One wind tunnels or putting fizz into Coca-Cola. The more typical end of it is helping power stations to reduce emissions, or any industry that needs to transport air and gas around. I mean, I guess that the kind of main features of our workforce that might make us different to others is we've got 12,000 people across 40 countries, so there's not a huge population in any country apart from the US and China. So typically we're looking at low hundreds of people, which can make kind of investment in complex systems challenging. And the second thing is that we're mainly male, about 80% male workforce. So that's one thing that would make us different to others as well. In terms of where we are in the journey, so we have a global benefits strategy, which is quite a new thing for us. We have some consistent aims, some consistent values we're trying to embed in terms of how we provide that flex in some of our bigger countries. It's what we might think of when we talk about flex. It's a platform that you log into and make choices. Other medium-sized countries might be doing some kind of manual flex or manual choice. In some of our really small countries, we have no flex because it's a really small number of people. But that's kind of where we are at the moment.
So, hi everyone. It's good to be here. As you're gonna hear on my accent, I'm from Brazil, but I'm based in London for almost 2 years now. Philip Morris International, or PMI, is a tobacco company, and the most known brand is Marlboro. So I guess you've heard about it. We are in the same journey. So looking at the Pulse survey early today, seeing that all the organizations, or the majority of the organizations, they have this multiple complex or layout or approach to benefits, how they manage it. We are not different from there, or we were not. We were at the same space, but Philip Morris started in a journey 2 years ago to revisit benefits globally, and we established 3 main imperatives for the organization. One of them would be a global governance or central governance. Before that, all the markets, they would have their own autonomy to take decisions. The other one would be to put our employee experience at the center of our strategy, and finally technology to help us and to embed that all what we want to achieve. In terms of the global central approach, we've started with, of course, the foundation, getting data, benefits inventory, which in 92 countries where we are operating, it was kind of a mess to try to find out all the benefits that we are offering for our employees. Then we established global minimum standards. We are working on centralizing the communication to employees, and the technology is going to be our next step in this journey. It's a mid-term strategy for the organization.
I'm just going to pause temporarily because I noticed a couple of people standing, and there actually are, you don't have to sit in the front row, but there's actually a seat at that table and a seat at that table, and there's one at this table as well. So given it's a longer session, you might want to sit down. So yeah, it's interesting what you've picked up there, and that sort of brings us on to talking about that idea of consistency and choice and flexibility across different countries, and how desirable is it to be consistent? Is that really something that we should be looking at, and you know, what does that mean for your employee experience? So I want to start with you, Fabio, just to talk about how your attitude to consistency.
Right. Yeah, consistency globally it might be hard, right? Because we are talking about local needs as well. But what we are trying to achieve with the global consistency is the message that we are sending out to our employees. One, it's access to benefits and how we enhance their experience towards their benefits. And I'll give you a quick example. We do have a portal with our benefits, but for you to look for your benefits or to try to find something, it's called My Guidelines. It's not intuitive at all. And then when you click there, even the options, perks, what does it mean, perks, to employees? They are looking for a child care allowance or meal allowance, menopause benefits, whatever. So it's not intuitive the way we have it structured. We want to send a clear message to employees and how they can access and what it's available to them. This is the consistency. But also we are taking in consideration the local relevance in this process as well. So it takes a lot of strategy and effort to make it to work, but having this global consistency, I think it will help us with the one message, clear message to employees, and then the markets will have some flexibility to, it goes to the flexibility as you were talking in the beginning, giving them this opportunity to showcase the best way it is relevant for that market.
And Jamie, how does that play out at Chart Industries, or how would you like it to play out?
I think very similar. I think we, as I said, we've got a global benefits strategy now, and we have some global providers. And I think the consistency we're looking for is around what does it say about us as an employer, what are our values as a company, and what are the typical needs of our employees. So there is definitely some consistencies around well-being. I mentioned that we do a lot of engineering, manufacturing, health and safety at work is a big thing. So there's definitely some important things we want to say about health and safety and benefits that we want to provide in that context. I think it's less important to us that every employee in whatever country has exactly the same benefits or exactly the same experience. I think they want to see something of who we are as a company and our values. But if we're honest, a lot of our employees' lives in China, in India, in the UK, in South Africa, and in the US are really different. And their needs from a benefits perspective are really different. And the state provision is really different. So I think it's less important to us that we would have absolute consistency everywhere, but we do have some principles around choice and then some of those global strategic initiatives I mentioned as well.
Thank you. So, Carl, you obviously work with clients across a broad range of sectors and needs and so on. What do you see in terms of that balance between equity of offerings and fairness and regional variation and cultural nuances? What are some of the thoughts that you delve into?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think most companies will have a view that they want their employees across the world to have a broadly similar experience. They don't want, and that never used to be the case, right? It was very localized, and you could have employees of our company in the US having a wildly different experience to employees of that same company in the Philippines, for example. And I don't think that's acceptable to businesses anymore. However, there is a lot of nuance around the world, and there is a lot of complexity, and the social security systems differ massively. So to Fabio's point around minimum standards of care, I think that's a really clever way of approaching it, because you're taking this viewpoint of, we want to provide our employees around the world with, our duty of care sits here. And then it's assessing, well, what does the state provision look like in each of those countries around the world? Do we need to privatise to meet up to, to marry up to our duty of care? Does the state system already provide that? And then I think you're looking at this world of, well, what's the art of the possible around privatisation of employee benefits in those marketplaces? What can we do to support people in other aspects of their lives, the moments that matter to them? In the UK, it's vast, right? It's the most mature market in the world for employee benefits. You can support people through fertility and through, transgender benefits and all those sorts of things, that you can't do in other countries for cultural or other reasons. But I still think opening up to whatever is possible in those markets is the right approach to give people that choice, because we're all different. We all have different wants, needs, fears, desires, concerns. They're different in us from one day to the next. So having boxed benefits or linear benefits is, as I said earlier, archaic. So I think that's the approach I would take. And then in markets where there is limited state provision and there's limited privatisation options, then companies are really looking towards allowances. So you shouldn't necessarily say, even I would say potentially, here's some core benefits with some flexibility, here's some voluntary benefits to choose from. still not wildly flexible in a market where there's no options, right? So why not then operate allowance-based systems where you can access the private market, the consumer market? Just because you're spending 3%, 5%, 10% of salary on benefits, doesn't mean that they have to spend that within this realm of things that you can facilitate for them. So opening up to the consumer market is huge. I always use the Wellbeing example. In the UK, you can put in place some gym memberships, maybe some class pass or something like that, so you can get access to yoga, Pilates. If you don't like going to the gym and you don't like yoga and Pilates, there really isn't a lot else for you. So why not have an allowance where people can purchase a pair of ASICS trainers because they're a runner, or purchase a golf membership because they walk 10 miles if you're like me playing golf because you're rubbish, zigzagging all over the place. So I think those are the things where you can turn anything into a benefit. You open up the world of opportunity to your employees, and they appreciate it because they can tailor something that's truly specific to them. So yeah, that's my sort of
Great,
that's
thank
my view
you.
on it.
So we've been speaking for just over 15 minutes. Hopefully you've got a bit of a feel for where our panelists are coming from. And what I'd really like to use the session is to be delivering the information that's most useful to you in the audience today. But the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if perhaps you give me a bit of a clue by putting some questions into Slido. But seriously, if there's stuff that you're thinking, I really would like to know more about this or that and the next thing, do pop questions in. While you're having a think and popping that in, I want to get into the technology side, given that is what we promoted the session as being. So we probably should talk about that. And I'm going to come back to Jamie and Fabio in the first instance about the ways that you're using technology to deliver benefits in line with your particular company strategy. So, Jamie, if you can answer that question first and then to Fabio.
Yes, I guess from our perspective, there's a couple of aspects to the technology, probably fairly obvious. But first, the sort of employer-facing technology, so using platforms and systems to get data and insights about what employee benefits are of interest to people. So what's popular and what's not. Where is something not popular and we think it should be popular and therefore we want to invest a bit more? What's really popular but we can't afford it, so therefore we have to explore other funding models, co-pay, etc. So there's the employer-facing technology, and some of that is global. So for example, in partnership with our benefits broker, we have access to that kind of global technology, and some of it's local on local platforms, as I mentioned previously. And then there's the employee-facing technology, and I think this is probably where we're not quite where we'd like to be. As I say, some mature markets, the US is our biggest example, have some quite good tech, engaging tech, flexible tech that means employees can get in and see things and make informed decisions about their benefits. In lots of our countries, that's done a lot more manually, and with some more limited, more dated technology. But those are the kind of two ways that we look at technology and the two streams that we're trying to push forward and get better in.
I guess it's a similar experience that we are having at PMI. We are launching this RFP next year to find a player to help us with the technology piece, of course. But we have the same impressions that the technology can help us with the engagement, tracking utilization, understand what's the most valuable benefit for our employees, even running some kind of satisfaction survey in the benefits that has been that it's available to our employees, and having this consistency in approach, and then touching on the meaningful aspects of the benefits for our population, and also helping them to understand what's available, because there is so many benefits available out there that sometimes they get lost and they don't know how to use those benefits available through them. And coming from an organization where we have a very rich benefits package, so sometimes hearing our employees complaining, say, "Have you tried that solution?" I say, "No, I didn't know that it was available." It's kind of, come on. But yes, this is to help with the experience and also bring some automation in the process as well.
Thank you. So, Carl, what do you see from Ben's point of view in terms of the kind of tech? Do you need the same tech in every country? What's common? What are employers doing with their benefits tech globally?
Yes, I think desired state would be the same tech across the globe for a number of reasons: economies of scale in terms of purchasing, consistency if you've got globally mobile workforces, annualized data, globalized data. So you're actually pulling data from one single source rather than trying to collate multiple sources. The challenge is that there's the complexity of the market dictates that there are specialists in each of those markets that do run benefits and run through these platforms, and there isn't really a global benefits platform. Well, there is. I give you 3 guesses as to who I'm going to say that is, but there is a solution. There are a few solutions, but then the others, I'll call them. Then you're saying we've got 7 people in Bulgaria. Okay, well that's going to be the same price as your 1,000 people in the UK. It's just not a consistent. It's not a model that you can roll out globally. So this is where we come into the market, and where we've helped companies is with that approach to one consistent platform across the globe that can cater for all of the different demands within the complexities of a company's employee benefits proposition. So I think that would be. I think most people would say that would be desired state for the reasons I outlined earlier.
Great. Well, I'm delighted to say that our wonderful audience, they might look like they're being really quiet, but actually they've been very busy. Can we have the Slido questions up on screen? Because they've absolutely come flooding in. If you haven't asked, or even if you have, if you can see a question you can like it, and that will make it more popular. And that also, because there's so many, we're probably not going to get through them all in this particular session. It's always handy to know which ones most people want us to answer. But I'm going to start with the one that's currently running top, is about what global minimum standard benefits are most common. Shall I come to you on that one, Carl, in the first instance, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. I think this is pretty common. I think most global minimum standards would operate under retirement, health, death and disability. They would be the 4 areas that you look to provide a duty of care to your employees across the world. But I'd be interested to hear if the gents next to me agree.
Yeah, nothing to add, completely agree.
Okay. In that case...
Same, yes.
We had a rule beforehand, if we were just going to say the same thing, we did actually, it was just imply.
It seems simple, but it's not so simple to implement it globally, because each market, they have their own complexities and also public offerings as well. But those are the main areas, yes.
Okay, so that's where you should look first and then work it out country by country. So I'm going to go on to the question that's now coming up top, and I think this was Fabio on our call last week. I can't remember, but this issue about dealing with the perceptions of unfairness from employees who see benefits in other countries as more favourable, that they all want everything.
Yes. And then through our assessment, when we've established this COE, of course, we identified that some of the markets, they were more advanced in the offerings they have for our employees, and others, they will only have kind of the basic package overall. But the perception that I think with the technology will help us to drive this consistency message and explaining why some of the benefits are in place for the employees. And we do have kind of a common recurrent questions from single employees with no kids saying, what's in there for me? Other than employees with family and kids, they can get access to child allowance or other benefits. And we do believe that with the technology and the flexibility and choice, no one is left behind, because they will be able to customize the package based on their needs or life moment. So this is one of the main goals that we want to achieve, implementing a global technology to support our population.
Can I just jump in there as well? I think if you're offering as much choice as is possible in that market, that's your comeback to your employees, right? There's nothing more we can do in this market. Our hands are tied. If, however, you're holding back and not giving them access, and it's not about you paying for it, it's about facilitating access through technology to the vast array of options within that marketplace, then they may have a point that other markets have got access to things that you're not giving them access to in that particular market. So I think you can say with confidence, that we're doing all we can if you are literally doing all you can.
Great. And now there's a few questions. There's one also about the value of benefits and not having too much choice, therefore giving more valuable benefits. And that's different but similar to this question that's coming up, as I think, where's it gone now? What amount would you say is a meaningful amount for personal allowance, and how often do you provide it? And those two questions sound like they almost reflect each other. Of if you give too thin an amount, it's almost valueless. But if you have fewer, you can give more value. Or if you're going to do an allowance, it needs to be of a certain value. Any thoughts across the team of how you get that balance right? Jamie, you look like you're nodding, so you might have some views on that.
I'm thinking because I've got no idea how to answer this. So
Sorry.
I've sat quietly. I think that's really difficult. I don't have an answer for what's the meaningful minimum amount. I mean, thinking about our markets again, to mention a couple of them, the US, you need quite a lot, I think, because there's less state provision on some very expensive items, and therefore you need, to offer that choice and flexibility to employees. The opposite might be something like Germany, where there's really high and consistent state provision in some of the main benefit areas, and therefore there's probably less need to flex. So I'm probably repeating what I said for other questions, but I don't have a consistent global answer for that.
Okay, I'll come to Carl. I think that probably sounds like he's the one to answer.
Well, I don't really have a full answer but I would say that it differs in different markets, right? So don't try and take £50 a month in the UK and turn that into the equivalent of £50 a month in every country, because there's obviously variances in economies around the world and how far that will get you. So I think that's the first thing I would say. And again, I think there's another question there around, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? I've worked with a client recently who were looking at restricting their senior employees' pension contributions down from a very high level to a slightly lower level. And that equated to about £15 per employee per month for their blue collar workforce. I was like, that is not worth it. £15 a month and all that hassle you're going to get from your senior employees, just don't do it. So I think, again, is the juice worth the squeeze would be another point. How much is it going to cost you versus the value piece? And then I think, again, finally it comes down to what you're doing with these allowances. Is it a general flex allowance? Is it a health and wellbeing allowance? If it's a health and wellbeing allowance, are we trying to cover for, I don't know, a gym membership a month or the equivalent of? Then you can work out what the costs are in each market for those sorts of things. If it's a general flex allowance, I mean, I think our data would say somewhere between £50 and £100 UK sterling per employee per month is what most companies look at in terms of an allowance. And it's a use it or lose it, or you roll it over, but most companies will operate a use it or lose it policy.
I'm going to jump to a question that we originally had further down the list about using technology to improve the data and insights that help you make decisions that will optimise what you do, whether it's an allowance or benefits, and combine that a bit to a question that's come in from Ollie about what tools are you three using at your companies to gain insight and understand employee preferences globally. So I think it plays to that same question, which I know we had your name against, Jamie, earlier. So how do you find out what people want and what makes sense in your company?
So, I mean, I've touched on it already, but there's probably a few kind of main data points that we would use. So one is things like the employee survey around trends and concerns that come out through that. We do those every 6 months. Some of you might do them more often. As I've said already, we work with a global benefits broker that can provide us with insights through their technology. That's at the moment employer facing. We have an ambition to make it employee facing. And then there's individual sort of global tools that we have available. So we have a global wellbeing partner, for example, so that we can get usage data on the wellbeing app that's available in terms of what are the themes that people are interested in, what are people engaging with, where's that consistent, where's it different. So those are some of the kind of key data points we would use in making our decisions about where to invest our time and money.
While you've got the mic, there's a question that came in a little while ago. I've just spotted it. Picking up the fact that you've got quite a male-dominated company, have you customised your benefits offering in any market to make it more relevant to that predominantly male group of employees?
Yeah, I mean, it's heavily in our mind when we think about our wellbeing provision, for example, and some of the trends that you see with the male workforce and wellbeing provision, and perhaps a reluctance to engage, especially in some other economies. So we feel that we need to kind of overemphasize and overinvest in some of those areas. It's an interesting challenge in the question, though, because bizarrely we probably spend a lot of time thinking about our female minority workforce, and how do we make sure we're catering for them? And they're probably not the ones with the loudest voices, and not the ones who will show up in all the trends if you look at what's most popular or what's most important. So it's a good challenge, I think, in the question that we probably should think about the men specifically a bit more as well. But bizarrely, we think more about the females because they are the minority.
So coming across to you, Fabio, that point about what data technology tools are you using to find out what your employees want?
Well, it's a similar approach that Jamie was describing, but as we don't have a unique platform to help us to identify some of the utilization, it gets a little bit tricky to go into the details of each market. We rely on the Pulse survey, of course, employee survey, to get some insights, focus groups as well, to understand what is available, what they are, their preferences, what they are asking for. But also we leverage on our global broker to support us with trends in each market and test it out to see if it's relevant for the market. So it's a kind of different data points that help us to understand a little bit how to address our employees' needs.
Which probably brings us, Carl, onto that visibility question and some of the shifts and trends that you're seeing of people being able to look at very disparate offerings globally. What trends and insights can you give employers about what could be possible these days to get that sight of what they've got on offer and should have an offer?
Yes, I mean, like I say, the market is evolving all over the world, right? There's more choice and flexibility than ever before. So understanding the art of the possible in each market is really important. So work with your brokers to understand that. I think when it comes to the sort of just touching on the data point as well, I mean, when it comes to the oversight of data, I think, through our technology, we display global, global data, in terms of, so we can look at locally and globally. But I think when it comes to things like allowances, what you can do very cleverly is actually look at things like, well, what are people spending allowances on in the consumer market if you're allowing them to do so? If half of your population are going to Derek's gym down the road and you haven't got a relationship with Derek's gym to offer a discount, then maybe go and have a conversation, right? So I think that's insights as well that you can draw from this. So it's not just a case of, if you ask a broker what's available in the employee benefits market in X country, they're going to give you a list of all of the things that they know, but just don't forget anything can be an employee benefit, right? So understanding what your people are, what they're spending their money on, what their concerns are through surveying and focus group work, then you can build stuff around them that doesn't have to be necessarily classed as an employee benefit in the traditional sense.
So we've got a question coming up about investments and cost and justifying spend. And we chatted about this last week, actually, quite a bit. So I'm going to come to you first, Fabio, but asking the question as it is here today, how are you convincing CFOs that investment in flexible benefits globally has an ROI and how's this being demonstrated? If I could be cheeky and expand that to and benefits tech as well, because I think you can't do one without the other. You've been doing a lot of work on this, haven't you, Fabio?
Well, yes, I guess this is a question that all organizations, they have, right? How to convince our senior leaderships that this is relevant for the organization. And we are not different, so we are in the same stage. So basically what we have done is we've engaged with key stakeholders to help us to preach the message to senior leaders so they can understand what we are talking about. It's not only plug in a technology and leave it there. It's about employee experience and also add the VOI in the benefits, because so far there is no mechanism for us to track how our employees are valuing the benefits as we offer today. So we need all this package in this global inventory that we've done in benefits. We've identified 72 different benefits across the globe. So is it relevant? Well, it is for the market, but how can we create some consistency and use that to convincing our CFOs? And I would say in our case, it's even our IT function that we need to convince why this is important, because it's one of the points that they are asking. Well, I mentioned about the portal that we have available, so they think there is something available. but it's not engaging. So it's how bringing them along so they can be our advocate with the senior leadership as well. It's more or less on the money. Of course, money, it's important, but it's how you preach the consistent message with all of them so they understand what you're trying to do. It's not easy. We've been there for 2 years now, and there are still some senior leaders that they don't get it, but we're getting closer.
Can I just add in there as well? I think every business leader in the world will say that their people are their greatest asset. So to not invest in that asset is ridiculous. Technology.
To AI.
So to not invest in that asset is ridiculous. And also, I bet every single one of you are overspending money in areas that are of low appreciation to your employees. So you can create spend by seriously looking at your benefits offering and and seriously questioning, are we spending money in the right areas and can we redirect this? I can guarantee you most companies can move from scenario A to scenario B being considerably more appreciated by employees and at a cost neutral position.
Okay. Yes, and while you're answering, are you going to answer, Jamie? I know one of you last week were also talking about that, the money and using captives and how you save money and forward think, and I can't remember who it was. No? Okay. But Jamie, go ahead. But
I've got two things to say briefly on this. One is I think the way to convince the CFO in some ways is to get the CEO talking about it, and that might be a slightly cynical view, but that's definitely something that we've invested heavily in. I think the other thing that we're just kicking off at the minute, and we hope it will be helpful with the CFO, is we're starting a people risk project, and the object behind that, I suppose, is to look at what are some of the business impacts of some of the people risks that we face. So putting all of our data that we have on employee engagement, on employee well-being, on absence, on time off work due to health and safety, accidents at work, etc., all into the kind of melting pot and see if we can make some. I'm hesitant to even say it after listening to Tim this morning, but see how those things relate to one another, and how can we demonstrate that actually investing in employee well-being and employees being happy at work, how does that actually really impact the business finances? Because we're convinced that it does.
Just to your comment on the earlier. So we are looking at the opportunities as well in terms of benefits. So seeing what we have available and try to put a value on that. We do have in the UK a menopause program or fertility program for our female employees. And it's embedded in our health insurance. There is a cost for us on a monthly basis, and we are using for 1 or 2 employees, which is great. But then going through this journey, we are asking ourselves, is it the wisest way for us to invest that money? Maybe we could find a different way to provide that support instead of having that as a fixed fee in our contract, for example. So those are some of the elements that we are asking ourselves or looking at this opportunity to optimize a little bit on the cost of efficiency. The captive, it's an interesting one. We don't have a captive established yet. We do have a strong partnership with pooling networks, but this is my colleague John, the end of the room there. He's working on this captive strategy as well to bring that along. So it's kind of having a captive that helps us to drive what we want in terms of benefits. So I'll give you an example. The global minimum standards is what we want to all employees have in experience as benefit protection, access to healthcare, and even financial protection as well. But it's not easy to implement that in all the markets because there are restrictions. Insurers, they are not prepared. Not only that, so we have the preventive health screenings that we are launching as well as part of the global minimum standards. It's hard to find one global provider. I don't believe there is a global provider that will help you with that. And then locally, there will be so many variances in the way you can define your minimum protocol, but it will be hard for you to make sure that they will follow this protocol because they have their own rules in terms of how they give access to health. And captive is one great way for you to use that. And the profit that you can get from that, you can invest in countries that might struggle a little bit with budget, for example.
So this probably becomes somewhere into your level of expertise. How do you see employers perhaps using that captive, are they able to use some of, if they're making a profit, doesn't always, to justify some of the spend and getting things more globally consistent?
Yeah, I mean, if you're big enough and you can operate a captive, then it's a sensible route to go down, right? And it does potentially free up cost opportunities. So, it's not the only option. You've got multinational pooling as well. Yeah, I think it's a great way of looking at it. But I do think the first port of call before you even look what you're putting into a captive is look what you're offering in the first place and whether it's an appropriate thing to offer, whether it's getting the value that you desire from it, and maybe ask your employees that question, or not specifically that question, but tease it out of them through survey work or whatever that might be. So I think there's multiple ways of looking at this, and then you start to also think about ROI in terms of health and well-being within the workforce, less attrition, lower attrition within your workplace. How much does it cost to rehire people? Healthier, happier employees are more productive than unhealthy employees. I mean, it's all common sense stuff, isn't it, really? So yeah, I think there's multiple ways to skin the proverbial cat.
There is, and probably there's as many ways as there are people in the room, so probably at that point needs a bespoke solution. Or I want to get that AI question in, because Carl, you and I discussed this last week, and luckily somebody's actually asked it on Slido, so I'm going to again use that wording. Any tips on how to use AI to develop a global benefits strategy and or communicate it? So somebody wants to sit back, put their feet up and let AI do it all. Would that work?
I don't think we're a million miles away from and we're come and see Seb's our CEO's speech later on. They'll talk about this in more detail, but I don't think we're a million miles away from you being able to go into a platform and say, please tell me what a market median benefits proposition would look like in Austria in the tech sector. Spits out result. Okay, build it for me. Builds. I don't think we're a million miles away from that. I think that's maybe a few years down the line. So, I think it's incredibly exciting.
So we've got 2 minutes left of this session. The good news is there isn't another session in this room straight away, so we don't have to all rush away. But I'm going to wrap up the panel so those of you who do want to move on and walk around the exhibition can. And I've asked each of the panel to think about their best single piece of advice that you can give employers when tackling a global benefit strategy. Just to throw in a bit of a curveball, somebody has said, if you're just starting out for the first time, where do you start? So if anybody has got something for a beginner in your piece of advice, that would be appreciated. But don't worry if you've got something prepped. So if I can start with you, Fabio, and work way down the line.
Well, it's a long journey, actually. I guess I would say be resilient with the project, because you're going to have some ups and downs in that. So be resilient is one of them. But get your stakeholders engaged since the beginning. That will help you through some of these moments. Bite-size the project. I think the way we've done that helped a little bit to show consistency, even with our CFOs and senior leaders. The way we are introducing the central approach, global broker, global minimum standards. So they see the value and it's evolving. So bite-sizing, it worked for us. So then you need to find what would be the best approach for your organization, of course. But it's one of the elements that helped. And then finally, it's the foundation. You need to have this foundation set, well done, so it can glue everything else what you're doing, especially when you're bite-sizing. You need to be a clear strategy where you want to go. And if it's going to be in 5 or 6 years, that's fine. But it's just the foundation that needs to be clear out there, so they understand why you're doing or what you're proposing.
Jamie.
I think it sounds obvious, but being really clear what it is that you want to achieve. There's a temptation, I think, for those of us in reward or HR. What we want is visibility of everything. We want to be able to see everything, and lots of kind of insights and data, and that's a good thing to want. But it's probably not going to make much difference immediately to your employees or to your CFO, for that matter. So therefore, what's the purpose of this from a business? What's the business point of view? What difference does this make to our people and to the business? So that'd be number one. And the second thing I would say is, just because you can't go straight to all singing, all dancing, globally consistent flex platform, it doesn't mean that you can't do really meaningful things that do make a difference to the business and its finances and its employees and your retention. And so focus your energy on where you can make the biggest difference with the resources that you've got. That's definitely what we are trying to do.
Carl.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echoing that point. Don't let the pursuit of great be the enemy of good, right? If you're trying to achieve global parity, you'll never get there. The only way you can achieve that is by stripping everything out and offering everyone nothing. It's literally the only way you can create parity globally. And my second point would be, don't assume there's not a global tech solution that can support you in your endeavours, because there is. And come and chat to us.
I said he was allowed to put a plug in at the end there, if he doesn't do too much of a sales pitch. Which stand are you on? Do you remember?
33.
Okay. So the only reason I'm asking is that I'm going to wrap up now. So I think first, before I say anything more, let's say thank you to our three fantastic panelists.